Spider-Man Life Story, written by Chip Zdarsky, art by Mark Bagley. I've been really enjoying this series. I'm loving this concept of taking Spider-Man in 1962 and aging him in real time. Now, this is issue 3, and we are in the 80s, and Peter Parker is right now 37 years old. And it reminds me a little bit of that movie Into the Spider-Verse, how we had that alternate reality Spider-Man where he was like older and his life maybe wasn't so great. So in this issue, we're sort of seeing an older Spider-Man and seeing him sort of come to terms with being older. And Chip Zdarsky really goes to some dark places with Spider-Man's life story in this. And it is just really fascinating, really interesting. I love the dark places he goes to. So good. Okay, let's dive into the story in this issue. So MJ is pregnant with twins. Now Aunt May is 90 years old and she has dementia. So, we've never seen Aunt May be so decrepit like this. So that was fantastic. Aunt May refers to MJ as Gwen accidentally. And, MJ does not really like this. So, MJ, she really needs Peter right now. She's about to give birth, but Peter is off-world. He is a million miles away on Battleworld, fighting for the entertainment of the Beyonder, which is a reference to the Secret Wars storyline that was actually going on in the 80s in Marvel Comics. So that's sort of where Peter is. Finally, Peter comes back to Earth, and he is talking to Reed Richards, and both of them look a lot older here. Reed Richards has gray hair. Peter definitely looks aged. Peter, at this point in his life, has started Parker Industries, so at least he's, has some money and is sort of successful a little bit in a way. And we're focusing on Reed Richards a bit here, and Peter's, thinking about Reed. And he's thinking how Reed is all alone. He pushed his wife away. He pushed his friends away. He pushed everyone he loved away. All because he has some sort of sense of responsibility for the planet. And Peter sort of says to himself, what is Reed Richards fighting for besides an abstract world that only he can help deliver? So you can see Peter sort of doubting himself and doubting this sort of superhero lifestyle, which is just a very interesting thing to explore. So Peter is now in the Black Venom suit, which is also something that happened in the 80s in various Spider-Man comics where he got that black suit. So Peter goes home and him and MJ embrace. Now in the backdrop of this story, the US and Russia are, nuclear war tensions are escalating, which is something that happened in real life in the 80s. And supposedly when this whole battle world happened, most of the US superheroes were off-world, but all the Russian superheroes were not, and they stayed home and they were protecting Russia. So Russia thought now would be a good time to attack with all these US superheroes, for the most part, gone. So Russia launched missiles at the US. And the Vision, a superhero in the Marvel Universe, right? He was able to sort of steer away that missile from exploding in Manhattan, but he still couldn't stop it. So he managed to shift that missile to Allentown, Pennsylvania, a less populated district. But the bomb still exploded, and Vision was in the middle of it. To protect himself, he went intangible, but he was in the middle of this huge explosion. And it's explained that he has since stayed intangible. Perhaps it was a side effect of the explosion, but perhaps it was the horror of being in the middle of all that destruction that he was like shell-shocked from it. And, I just couldn't imagine being in the middle of a nuclear explosion and witnessing all that destruction around you. So that was a very interesting sort of concept to explore as well. So Peter and Parker Industries, they are trying to solve all this radiation damage and fallout from these sort of nuclear weapons. And also, Peter finds out that he has a copycat in the black suit going around pretending to be Spider-Man and shooting people. So that's another thing he has to deal with. Peter's talking to Reed Richards once again, and Reed is concerned because he's analyzed Peter's black suit and finds out that it's alive. The Venom symbiote is alive, and it's trying to mentally and physically bond with Peter and take over his body. Peter says, he knows this. He studied this suit too. He has a fail-safe with MJ where she can remove the Venom symbiote from Peter if things ever get too crazy. But Peter says to Reed, he's getting older. He's getting slower. The symbiote suit helps keep him strong to protect people, helps still keep him relevant. And I love this exploration of Peter's self-doubt. This is something that a lot of professional athletes go through at the end of their careers when they're especially approaching 40, where they just can't perform at the same level they once did. So it's very interesting seeing that portrayed with Spider-Man, who for the most part we only see him as a young 20s, young 30s man, and who's very still with it. So this is something definitely an older Spider-Man would struggle to deal with. Back home, Aunt May has wandered off with the babies. Her dementia is kicking in. She's starting to lose it. And, Peter Parker sort of runs home to sort of deal with this. The police found Aunt May. She had the twins, and she was staring in a shop window. So MJ and Peter are arguing, and MJ wants to put May in a senior's home because, they can't take care of her. Peter disagrees, and this is where, MJ sort of really starts yelling at Peter, and she's like, look, you're Spider-Man. You got Parker Industries. I could tolerate you ignoring me, your wife. I got used to it. I'm used to feeling like the runner-up to the perfect ghost of Gwen Stacy. So, MJ is sort of rethinking Peter's past love and how she doesn't measure up to her. And MJ continues on saying, but you're a father now and a caretaker. You need to be here with us. Even that stupid suit is interfering. It's like you're addicted to it. So, I love this. These are all valid, real points. MJ is totally in the right here, When you're married to, this superhero and they're off-world for, months at a time or something, you definitely start to feel neglected. And especially when you have a family and you're caring for your husband's senile aunt, it is a lot to take in. So Peter storms off, and he's like, I don't need the suit. He leaves the black suit behind and hops into his normal gear. He's patrolling the streets. He finally runs into that copycat Black Spider-Man that we sort of saw earlier in the issue. Turns out it was Kraven the Hunter. And Kraven says, he's dying of cancer, and he says to Spider-Man, I am dying, cancer, and yet still I am stronger than you. You are weak, Spider, growing weaker. To see this happen, to see you barely exist anymore, it's heartbreaking. You were once a beautiful warrior, and so you deserve a warrior's exit. And he manages to sort of overcome Spider-Man, and he shoots and kills Spider-Man. So Spider-Man is dead now, and he's being buried in a random grave. But the Venom symbiote, who is back at Peter's house, it manages to detect Peter slowly dying and slipping away. So it manages to sort of break out and escape from Peter's house, and it travels to Spider-Man's grave and sort of envelops him, and it saves him just in time to revive him, and Peter manages to be alive again. Mind you, I don't know if I fully buy the science of this, but I'm just going to go with it. So Peter's alive again. He has the Venom symbiote, and he tracks down Kraven, who killed him. And Peter, he's beating Kraven up, and he's almost going to kill Kraven himself. But MJ then shows up. I assume she maybe followed this Venom symbiote as it left the house. And, Peter, wanting to sort of fight against the Venom symbiote and not be taken over from it, he asks MJ to use that fail-safe that he created if the Venom symbiote was ever too much. And he asks MJ to use it. MJ pulls out this pulse gun thing, and she shoots it, and it manages to separate the Venom symbiote from Peter before he fully loses himself and kills someone. So Peter is now free from the Venom symbiote, but he is a slightly broken man full of self-doubt now. So we see Peter struggling to cope with what to do next in the ending pages of this issue. And it looks like MJ is leaving him and she's taking the kids with her, and Peter is left alone by himself, and he has to take care of his like Aunt May, who is starting to lose it, right? And the last page of this issue is Kraven, now sort of at peace, feeling that he has helped rejuvenate Spider-Man. Kraven grabs a gun and he goes to kill himself, and the Venom symbiote sort of shows up, and it perhaps tries to stop him, maybe, or maybe not. We'll have to see where future issues go with that, but that is how the issue ends. So when I finished this issue, I was like, whoa, I can't believe some of the places Chip Zdarsky decided to go to in this story. I actually really enjoyed the Aunt May dementia angle, because that is something that definitely would happen, if Aunt May keeps getting up there in age. So I love seeing that explored. I loved seeing Spider-Man sort of have to face getting older and not being at his like peak abilities anymore. I loved some of the dark stuff with Reed Richards explored. I loved seeing how MJ and Peter's marriage would struggle from him being a superhero. That is all interesting, fascinating stuff. Loving this series. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10. This is just like amazing stuff. Really excited for future issues.